It's poetic, really. This idea of self-destruction wrapped in a velvet bow, dressed up in the guise of passion and desire. A love so potent, so consuming, that it blurs the line between pleasure and pain until there's no distinction, no separation. Just one endless, spiraling descent into blissful ruin. Because love, real love, the kind that makes your heart race and your blood sing, that kind doesn't save you. It devours. It's a fire that burns away everything you are, leaving behind only smoke and ash. But isn't that what makes it beautiful? Go ahead, chase it. Run after it like a mad dog, teeth bared, eyes wild. Sink your fangs into it. Feel it writhe beneath your grip, clawing at your insides, tearing you apart piece by piece. Because that's what true love does. It's a predator, a beast lurking behind the mask of romance, promising paradise while sharpening its claws on your soul. Oh, you can try to tame it, try to keep it leashed. But love doesn't bow to chains. It slips through the gaps, whispers in your ear, making you forget everything else until you're lost. That's the tragedy. Finding something that makes your pulse hammer, your breath catch, only to watch as it tightens around your throat like a noose, and you won't fight it. Number, that's the final joke. The more it hurts, the tighter it squeezes, the deeper you let it cut, because you want it to. Pain is part of it. The price you pay for something so intoxicating, so pure, and you pay willingly, hands trembling, voice shaking, as you give everything you are for the chance to feel alive. Because the truth is, love never asks for permission. It drags you down into its depths, into its shadowed embrace, and by the time you realize what's happening, it's already too late. It's in your veins, your bones, flooding every nerve, twisting every thought. You belong to it, a slave to its every whim, a puppet on strings made of longing and desperation. And the worst part? You're smiling the whole way down. But that's the allure of self-destruction, the knowledge that this is something worth being broken for. Because what's life without a little risk, without a thrill that makes your heart stutter and your breath hitch? You want to be consumed, to be devoured whole, to stand at the precipice of oblivion and throw yourself off with open arms, not caring if you shatter on the rocks below. Because if love doesn't drive you mad, if it doesn't tear you apart, then what's the point? The mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for. Life at its core is more than mere survival, more than the heart's dull rhythm, drumming out the days in monotonous beats. To merely exist is a curse, an endless gray void of waking and sleeping, eating and breathing, an empty cycle without purpose or pain. It's why people search, why they cling desperately to anything that promises a glimpse of meaning. Because without something more, something that sets the soul ablaze, all that's left is emptiness. And the irony? Meaning is never found in comfort, in safety. No, meaning hides in the dark corners of desire, in the dangerous crevices of obsession. People talk about peace as if it's some noble pursuit, but peace is lifeless. It's the absence of struggle, the death of ambition. It's the silence of a tomb. Purpose, real purpose, is forged in the fires of passion. It's born from the desire to tear through the mundane, to rip apart the ordinary, to break something, yourself if necessary, just to know that you're alive. Find something that seizes you, something that makes your bones tremble and your heart race, something that crawls into your skull and refuses to leave. Because that's what it takes. It's not enough to simply want something. Want is weak. Desire is hunger. A black void that pulls at everything around it, dragging it in, consuming it. It's relentless, unyielding. Desire doesn't ask. It demands. It whispers in the dark of night, sinking its teeth into your thoughts, wrapping its claws around your will. Desire, when it's real, becomes the reason for every breath. But the greatest trick, the one that most can never master, is that what drives you must haunt you. It must hurt. Purpose isn't about being fulfilled. It's about being consumed. To live for something means to burn for it. To know deep down that it could kill you, will kill you, and to love it all the more because of that. The moment you stop fearing, it is the moment it loses its power. Purpose is supposed to scare you, to stalk your every step, to make you shiver, to keep you awake, staring into the ceiling, wondering if it's already devoured too much. Because without that danger, without that risk, it's just a passing fancy, a hobby, an amusement, something that can be discarded when the spark fades. But if it's real, if it matters, you'll let it pull you to the edge, and you'll stare into the abyss, into the deep black, and smile, because purpose, real and burning, is the only antidote to the suffocating bleakness of a life half-lived. People waste their days muttering to themselves, bemoaning their fate, trapped in their tiny cages of regret and longing, never realizing that the only thing chaining them down is their own fear. They scream at the darkness as if it's some malevolent beast, as if it's something that can be banished by words alone. But darkness doesn't care. It's endless, indifferent. The only way to banish it is to become the light, to burn so brightly that the blackness recoils, hisses and shatters beneath the force of your blaze. Better to light the candle, better to hold that fragile flame in trembling hands and dare to push it forward, to make it devour the night, than to waste your breath spitting curses into the empty air. Because purpose is more than just a guiding star. It's the only weapon that cuts through the void, the only shield that stands against despair. Purpose is defiance. It's the audacity to stand alone, to set yourself on fire and roar out, "I will not be consumed by the dark, I will consume it." The weak will tell themselves that the world is too vast, that the dark is too deep, that no one flame can withstand the endless emptiness pressing in. And so they cower, shivering in the cold, trembling before the abyss. But those who have purpose know better. It isn't about conquering the dark. It's about outlasting it. It's about shining so fiercely that the black void is forced to acknowledge your presence, to see you, even if only for a moment, even if only long enough to snuff you out. That moment is everything, because in that moment, your flame, your fire, has made the darkness blink. Purpose is not comfort. It's not safety or security or the quiet, sedated numbness of mediocrity. It's a savage, searing clarity. It's the sharp edge of a knife pressed against the jugular of reality, demanding that something happens. It's the rejection of passivity, the refusal to simply endure. Purpose is a command, a proclamation that this existence will not be wasted on sighs and lamentations. It will be felt. It will be burned into the fabric of everything around it. To have purpose is to find that missing flare, that wild spark that transforms life from a colorless blur into a riot of sensations, each one sharper, deeper, more agonizing and more exquisite than the last. Pain, triumph, ecstasy, despair, all of it becomes brighter, more real. Because when you know what you're living for, every second throbs with meaning. Every heartbeat echoes like a drumbeat, a relentless reminder that this is what matters. Not the darkness that presses in, not the fear or the doubt or the weariness, but the flame, the hunger, the absolute certainty that you are chasing something that matters more than anything else. And the beauty? The beauty is that it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. Purpose is selfish. It's personal. It's wild and untamed, a creature that answers to no master but your own soul. To live for something greater, to be driven by something beyond mere survival, is to transcend the shackles of the mundane. It's to become something elemental, something terrifying. Because those who have purpose, real, unbreakable purpose, cannot be controlled, cannot be swayed. Once the fire is lit, once the hunger takes root, it becomes unstoppable. The world fears people like that. Fears the ones who would rather burn to ashes in the name of their obsession than rot in the chains of complacency. Because when someone finds purpose, when they light the candle instead of cursing the dark, the entire world trembles. That kind of resolve, that kind of ferocity is contagious. It spreads like wildfire, consuming everything it touches, making others question, making them wonder. And in a world that thrives on silence and resignation, a single voice, a single flame of defiance can upend everything. So light your flame, stoke it higher, let it blaze until it sears the edges of your mind. Let it burn through the walls that keep others caged. Let it rise until the darkness shrinks away from your heat. Because the shadows will always be there, lurking, waiting to drag you down, but with purpose, real, savage, alive. You become more than just another flickering light. You become a beacon, a bonfire, a star burning in defiance of the endless night. And even if it kills you, even if it devours every last piece of who you are, what of it? Better to die for something, to collapse in a blaze of glory, than to whimper your way through a life of whispered complaints and cringing submission. Better to be the flame that lights up the dark, that sears the very bones of the world, than to be just another voice cursing the shadows, too afraid to kindle the fire that could set everything ablaze. Focus on the path ahead, the goal, the prize that lies at the end of your endless pursuit. Because every time you pause to glance sideways, every time you let yourself become ensnared by trivialities, you give power to what is beneath you. Worrying over the small things casts big shadows, distorts them, makes the inconsequential seem monstrous. It lets the tiny pests become giants, twisting them into grotesque specters that loom over you, pulling your gaze from the prize and binding your mind in webs of doubt. Those small things, they are parasites feeding off your hesitation, off the moments when your will falters. All the little distractions, the petty grievances, the whispers of anxiety, they are nothing but hollow shapes that seek to gnaw away at your resolve, to drag you down into the muck of insignificance. But the only reason they exist, the only reason they even matter, is because you allow them to. By worrying over them, by diverting your gaze, you inflate them. You let them rise, obscuring your vision until the destination becomes a distant blur, something almost forgotten, hidden behind a curtain of your own making. Fixate on those nuisances long enough and they start to warp. A single misstep becomes a pitfall. A fleeting failure becomes a noose tightening around your throat. But it's all a lie, an illusion conjured by your own weakness. If you give attention to the pebbles in your path, you'll miss the mountain on the horizon. And that's what they want. Those shadows, those lingering doubts, to keep you shackled by fear, to make you think the small things have teeth, claws, fangs that can sink into your flesh and tear you down. But the small things are only as strong as you allow them to be. Pay them no mind, and they remain what they are, insignificant, unworthy of even a second glance. Let them yelp and shriek. Let them tug at your ankles and try to ensnare you. Crush them underfoot without a second thought. Because the moment you begin to fret, to fixate, to fear what is beneath you, you make the insignificant grow. A drop of worry becomes a tidal wave. A passing obstacle turns into a towering wall, a fortress built of your own hesitation. Blood is a birthright. Character is a scar that tells the world you fought, you bled, you endured, and emerged something more than what you were. It's not handed to you. It's wrestled from the jaws of your own weaknesses, ripped from the depths of your own suffering. Blood is a gift from someone else. Character is the mark you leave on the world when the gift of blood has been burned away. And the problem with blood is that it can betray you, can turn on you, can fail you when you need it most. But character, it's yours, and yours alone. No one can take it from you. No one can stain it, bend it, corrupt it. It is your creation, and only you decide its form. Some believe blood ties are sacred, that they define loyalty, define destiny. But destiny isn't in blood. It's in character. Blood might bind you to a lineage, but character is what binds you to yourself. It's the difference between those who crumble under the weight of expectation and those who rise above it, who shatter the chains of inheritance and carve their own path through the darkness. Blood calls for conformity. Character demands rebellion. Because the one who chooses character over blood chooses self over expectation, chooses to defy the script written by others, to become the author of their own fate. Blood is a map, pre-drawn, predetermined, a path laid out by ancestors long dead. But maps are for the timid. Maps are for those who fear to stray from the safety of known roads, who cling to the comfort of boundaries, of limits, of roles defined by others. Character is the one who takes the map and burns it to ash, who steps off the edge of the world and into the unknown. Because character knows that the only path worth walking is the one paved by your own hands, carved from your own bones, soaked in the sweat of your own labor. Blood tells you where you came from. Character tells you where you're going. Because blood fades. Blood dries. Blood runs out. But character endures. Character is the shadow that never leaves, the fire that never dies. It's what's left when blood has betrayed you, when lineage has failed you, when the name you were born with crumbles to dust. Character is what you carry into the grave, what echoes long after the flesh has rotted away. It's the mark you leave on the world, the proof that you were more than a name, more than a history, more than a drop of blood in a sea of faceless generations. It's what makes you more than human. It's what makes you eternal. Those who choose inaction seek refuge in the illusion of safety, thinking they've escaped the pain of failure, the sting of rejection. But inaction is merely a postponement, a delay of the inevitable reckoning. It's the coward's choice, a temporary asylum that feels like relief, but turns into a prison. The longer you stay, the thicker the chains grow, until what was once a choice becomes a sentence. Inaction whispers that avoiding discomfort is a victory, but it's a victory of fools, because there's a greater suffering waiting in the shadows, the suffering of unrealized potential, of talents squandered, of a life wasted. Temporary comfort is a venom far more dangerous than fear. It's a toxin that lulls you into complacency, that gives you just enough peace to keep you still, to keep you quiet, to keep you dreaming of what could have been instead of tearing through the world to make it real. It's a prison cell lined with velvet, a holiday for the lazy-minded, a brief respite before the real horror sets in. Because inaction is the cruelest of all comforts. It convinces you that doing nothing is preferable to facing the pain of trying. But that's the trap. That's the snare. Inaction may delay the suffering of the present, but it ensures the suffering of the future. And that suffering is far, far worse. The fools who worship at the altar of inaction, who mistake stasis for peace, who choose the soft, dull pain of idleness over the sharp, piercing agony of action. Those are the ones who truly suffer, because inaction is not a shield. It's a slow death, a decay that seeps into the marrow, that rots you from within until you are left hollow, empty, a husk of what could have been. Inaction breeds regret. Regret breeds resentment. And resentment turns inward until you're devoured by your own wasted potential. The suffering of action, of struggle, of striving. It's temporary. It burns bright and fierce, but it ends. The suffering of inaction lingers. It latches onto your soul and never lets go. Inaction is the holiday of fools who fear the scorching pain of effort, but are blind to the freezing agony of stagnation. Those who choose it think they are escaping, think they are safe, but what they are truly choosing is the slow suffocation of their own spirit. It's a slow-motion suicide, a prolonged erasure of everything they were meant to become. Because while they sit in their illusory comfort, the world moves on without them. It evolves, it adapts, it sharpens itself, and those who remain still become obsolete, outpaced, devoured by the march of time. The cost of inaction is the erosion of the self, a price far too high for the fleeting comfort it provides. To avoid discomfort is to make a pact with weakness, to bow your head to mediocrity, to surrender before the battle has even begun. Comfort is the enemy of greatness. Inaction is the blade that severs you from your own potential, that robs you of your own power. The greatest suffering is not found in the heat of battle, not in the bruises of defeat. It's found in the quiet, in the silence of those who chose to do nothing. It's the existential despair of the soul that has realized, too late, that it will die having accomplished nothing, that it let fear win, that it traded everything for a few moments of shallow peace, a peace that turned to chains around its wrists. To choose inaction is to choose oblivion. It's to choose to disappear quietly, unnoticed, a shadow slipping into darkness. And the worst part? Inaction is self-imposed. No one forces you to stay still. No one binds your hands but yourself. You lock the chains, you turn the key, and then you wonder why life has passed you by. Inaction is the greatest betrayal, the betrayal of self. It's choosing to rot away while pretending it's a form of self-care. It's choosing to let your dreams wither in exchange for a hollow semblance of tranquility. Those who embrace inaction will never know the pain of true struggle, but they will also never know the satisfaction of triumph. of power, of overcoming. Inaction is the coward's refuge, the hiding place for those who fear to bleed. But life will make you bleed whether you act or not. The only choice is whether you bleed for something that brings you closer to greatness, or bleed out slowly, helplessly, in the suffocating grip of stagnation. So choose your suffering wisely. Choose the pain that purifies, the pain that burns away your weakness, the pain that brings you closer to your own potential. Choose the agony of effort over the despair of inaction. Because inaction is not the absence of suffering, it's the breeding ground for a far deeper, far darker pain. The pain of a life unlived, a purpose unfulfilled, a self undone.